Let's be honest. Marketing executives have mastered a lot of skills, but if using authorship of a book to open doors for you isn't among them, today's thought leader for you has some great news for you. Hello and welcome. My name is Roger Courville, and today we're going to be talking about opening doors as a marketing book author. Welcome to another episode of Thought Leader Conversations, sponsored by the crew here at Virtual Venues, where you can instantly scale your virtual and hybrid event production team with a crew that helps you focus on something other than tech and logistics. But we're not here to talk about us today, and I am happy to welcome to the virtual stage Cathy Fyock, CSP, accomplished speaker, accomplished coach, authored and co-authored 11 books, and importantly has helped dozens of executives tell their story, amplify thought leadership, create competitive differentiation, build credibility and trust. I'm sure there are plenty of other reasons why that we'll hear today about how a book can make a big difference for you, even if you're in a corporate career. Notably, Cathy is accomplished as a speaker. I'm just proud of this part, boasting the highest earned award from National Speakers Association, the CSP, Certified Speaking Professional. I know how much work goes into getting that, so I'm excited that Cathy is here with us. Welcome, Cathy. Tell us a little more about who you are and what you do.
Well, it's great to be here, Roger. I've been a book coach now for 11 years. And what I think is maybe most surprising is that I really don't like to write. But what I have found, it is the great differentiator. It is the great credibility tool. It is the great way to stand out in the crowd. So while I don't like writing, I do like having written.
That's the way I put it sometimes too. I've written 4 books, and I think of them as the best business card I've ever created, right? I mean, I would much rather, instead of handing somebody a 50-cent business card, I'd rather just hand them a copy of my book. And I don't care if it cost me a few bucks. It's made me a whole lot more money.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because you become the person who wrote the book on it. And that's what authority is really all about. It's about authorship.
So, Cathy, one of the things that I loved on your website is you just put out there your own values. You believe in people, believing everybody's got a story to tell. And I know that doesn't just mean a once upon a time memoir or something like that. So out of curiosity, do you think this is particularly true with corporate executives? What are they missing out on if they don't have a book?
Well, I think sometimes people think, oh, who am I to write a book? And I don't know, who are you not to write a book? Because you likely have some wisdom, some experiences, some knowledge, and it may not be your story. It may be something bigger than that, your knowledge, your insights, your perspective that would be helpful when shared with your tribe. Uh, and I think what's interesting is that sometimes we don't think, we have value, but yet if you think about your younger self and you think about writing a book to your younger self, sometimes that just puts it into perspective, because it really does make sense to help educate, give hope, give inspiration to that younger version of you. And that's really what I do when I help people sit down to write their books.
We're speaking today with Cathy Fyock, cathyfyock.com, and I'm going to encourage you to go there. Spelled with a C for Cathy, and Fyock is Fyock if you're just listening here. But I'm going to encourage you to go there because she's got the coolest little custom illustration as her kind of logo, moniker, whatever you might want to call that. And I mean, if you do nothing else, just go there because that's a it's a brilliant little illustration. I love that. Cathy, you've helped a lot of professionals turn their expertise into a book. For a corporate,
Yes.
what are the first steps they should take to even begin the process, particularly if their schedule is already packed?
Well, the good news is, even if you have a packed schedule, you can write a book. Almost all of my authors are, in some ways too busy to write a book, but it's possible. But you have to have, I think, a strategic plan. So you need to put your plan together before you start writing. So I know some people say just sit down and start writing. No, I don't think so. I think you sit down and you make a strategic plan that aligns with your career, with your business. So the strategic elements are the purpose for the book for you. I mean, it's also for your readers, but what do you want the book to do for you? Do you want to use it as a tool to get new clients? Do you want to use it as a tool to influence senior management that you're part of the team? Figure that out first. So, the purpose of the book, the thesis of the book, what is it about? What is your focus on the topic? It's not just the topic, it's your slice of a topic. So, what is your point? For example, my first book was about the aging workforce, but that's a big, broad topic. My slice of it was what employers need to do to harness the power of an aging workforce. So that's the difference in a topic and a thesis. So coming up with your thesis, what is it that your point is about your topic? The next thing is to identify your target reader. Who do you want this book to be for? And I even have some exercises that I like to use with my clients in helping them discern what the reader really is looking for. So that you're not just writing your book for you. Some people think, oh, well, I'm writing my story, so the book is about me. Well, it may be about you, but it's not for you. If you're writing for you, it's a journal or it's a diary or it's something you give to your family and friends, close friends. But if you're really wanting to write a book, there's something in it for them. So it's being very clear on what that is and who you're speaking to. And then it's creating your structure, whether that's the 10 ideas or pillars or principles, or it's the 3 steps, or it's the 5 concepts, but figuring out what those elements are and creating a very detailed content outline. So those are the first steps, I believe, in getting clear on the book you need to write.
In your experience, for somebody that has never considered writing the book,
Mm-hmm.
do you have a story? Can I just say, what's a story of someone that you've worked with who really had never done this? Maybe you hadn't even ever considered it, but somehow you connected with you and then got a result that they were hoping for.
Almost it's interesting. Almost all of my authors find that writing the book takes them to a new level. It either brings them more business, it gives them more clarity about their topic, it gives them more confidence in their topic, it gives them, I don't know, they're stepping into this bigger version of themselves. They're stepping into their true thought leadership. And that's what writing a book, that's the power of writing a book. I'm thinking right now of one of my clients, Ruth, who is writing a book about her story. She'd done a TEDx talk. She had been a speaker. She'd been working in her area for some time, but she'd never written the book. And in fact, she was told that if she wanted to get on main stage and do those keynote presentations, she needed to have a book. So, but this process of sitting down to write the book was really an intriguing discovery. She learned more things about her topic than she had even initially thought. And now she is booking more business than she would have ever dreamed. She's getting calls from the media that she had never received before. So it's brought her a whole new level of involvement with her topic, with her audience, and a new level in her business.
Here's something that I've experienced. Both
Yes, good.
as an independent speaker, which I was for a whole lot of years, and even when I was employed for somebody. And I'm just curious if you've had a similar experience. For me, meeting planners who book speakers
Hmm.
love authors. I think they almost overvalue graduate degrees and authorship, right? You can, but when they can introduce you as the author of, there's just, I think you use the word authority. There's this instant credibility
Yes,
that
there
happens
absolutely is.
inside.
Absolutely.
I've seen CEOs who wrote a book on the topic of, in the realm of what their organization was. And,
Hmm.
and the point wasn't that they were even going to, they were not that they were going to go be a professional speaker. If you're a senior executive, you're already speaking in one context or another at internal events, at external events, on webinars or whatever. But starting a presentation with somebody else setting up your credibility is a powerful thing. Have
It
you
really is.
that
Really is.
or differently?
Well, let me share one other story with you, a personal story. And that is, I made this move before I was a book coach. I've been doing this work for 11 years now. But before that, I was a human resources executive professional and did speaking and training for HR individuals. But I wanted to make this transition to be a book coach. So, what did I do? I mean, I had the experience that I had that contributed. I'd been an author and I'd done some coaching, but I really hadn't been a book coach. So I wrote a book about how to write a book. And that became my number one credential. And now my books are really my credentials for being a book coach. And I love that because I'm walking proof that a book can reposition or position you in ways that you never dreamed of before.
Interesting. That is a great story. One of the things that I know you have led, and I may or may not use the right terminology here, so correct me, is creating anthologies that have, say, a dozen authors, each of whom contribute a chapter. Is that a way that someone may, utilize somebody like you to get their name in print without necessarily having to write the whole thing?
Absolutely. It's a wonderful way because a lot of people, well, in fact, when I started, the reason I started doing anthologies was that I had a lot of my HR colleagues, because that was my background. They said, "Oh, I'd love to write. I'd love to have a book with my name on the cover, but I don't think I'm ready for my own solo book." So that's when I got the idea of putting an anthology together, themed anthologies. And I just did another one that came out several weeks ago called When Work Works. And it featured a lot of different professionals and executives talking about what makes ideal workplaces. And it's much easier for someone to write a chapter, and it's a wonderful way to dip your toe in the water and see if you can write a chapter. And of course, I'm giving coaching and support, and we have all the publishing services. So it's been a great way for folks to explore what writing a book might be like.
Do I remember correctly that one of the services you have is like a mastermind group where people can, am I remembering correctly?
Yes, you are
Okay.
perfect. I do a speaker author mastermind that came after Lois Kramer and I wrote our book, The Speaker Author: Sell More Books and Book More Speeches. I'm a big believer that the combination of writing a book and speaking are a really powerful punch, and that it establishes your thought leadership like nothing else. So once I wrote that book, I realized there were a lot of people in my group that had written the book, but they didn't know how to operationalize the book and to put it into action. I've always said that a book is a magic wand and it will do magic for you in your career, but you have to do something with it. Just like, you just can't hold on to the magic wand and expect it to do magical tricks for you. You have to know how to wield the magic. So that's a group that I have, and we talk about orchestrating the launch. getting reviews, getting reviews posted on Amazon, getting testimonials for the front of the book, how to create a one sheet that positions you for speaking opportunities. We talk about all of those things because the book alone is a wonderful tool, but sometimes you have to know who to send it to or how to get it out there in the world. And sometimes gifting the book is a fabulous strategy, as you've already suggested.
That worked really well for me. And of course, to be fair, we're talking to corporate marketers here, so this strategy may or may not necessarily touch down. But for me, I had excellent success with getting a corporate sponsor for a book so that I could give away 1,500 copies or something like that, or letting them use it as a promotional. Like I would rework the cover and put their logo on the cover, and then they could use it as a promotional tactic, to gather leads or that kind of thing. And they had a lot of success with that, and that was a 6-digit enterprise that worked really well for me. But I'm thinking now back to the kind of the corporate executive. You mentioned gifting the book, and I think about that. You're speaking at your company's annual sales conference or something like that. I mean, you want to help your message outlive the 45 minutes that you've got on stage or something. That is a powerful way to move a few books, but also, again, establish credibility.
Absolutely.
The reason I brought up the mastermind and this moves into kind of my next question. The reason I brought that up is because I have found, like you, that I'm not a fan of writing, but I love having written. I'm dealing with that working on my doctoral thesis right now. The power of a mastermind is accountability as well, right? I mean, it's somebody that shows up and you get inspired because I just had a crappy day, but Cathy just had a great day and did something that just motivated me to get back at it. And so I'm curious, how does the process of writing a book help people clarify their brand message or communication strategy? You even mentioned learning more about your own topic when you wrote your first book. Can you share a success story or pick a part of that word salad right there?
Absolutely. There's something when you sit down to write a book, you have to say, what is the essence of what I have learned? What is the core nugget? If people can walk away with one element or one perspective, one insight, what is that critical piece? And doing that critical thinking about your topic helps you clarify it, helps you write it more effectively, but it's also more powerful than for you to have sort of mastered that element of your topic. So I love the fact that writing about your topic helps you understand it in a much deeper way. And I've had several authors come back to me and say, you said that, and I wasn't sure exactly what that meant, but now I have a whole level of, and a lot of times it shows up as confidence, but I think it's a deepening understanding and integration of that content with who you are and what you believe.
I want to even put an exclamation point behind something you said a little earlier, and I'm not even remembering exactly how you said it, but you talked about a book opening doors in a way that someone, and I just, at the time that you said that, I thought, oh yeah, I want to put an exclamation point behind that, because that's something that most people don't realize what it's going to do for you until you actually have done that. I'm just curious, is there anything to expound on there?
Absolutely. I've had folks call me because I didn't meet them. They're not in my sphere of influence. I had no connection with this individual, but they found my book. Either they just found it on Amazon or someone recommended it to them, but they found it and then they called me. And I love that, that it's a way to truly build business because I have new clients because of my books. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So just out of curiosity, when you started your business, you decided to write a book. Was the primary personal motivation because you were starting your business, meaning you needed to pivot from being an HR executive?
Hmm.
Was the
Exactly. I needed something to establish my new identity, and I wanted my book to speak for me in a way that a bio could never speak to what I knew and what I could offer. So it really presented a value proposition to clients and prospects that I had not been able to capture before.
Tell me how you work with someone to overcome the what I'm going to call the curse of expertise. Those aren't my words. I read that in a book somewhere. Right? Sometimes we know something so deeply and well because we've been working at this company for a long time, and I really know marketing because now I'm the senior director of whatever. But I don't necessarily know how to boil it down. Right? I found that for the first time that I ever worked with an editor, she started asking me questions and helping me clarify some things in part because I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess I see it that way because I already know how to drive a stick shift. It's hard to get back to remembering what it was like to not be able to drive a stick shift. Just out of curiosity, how do you help someone who take all that knowledge in their head and start to shape it?
Yeah, sometimes I have them think about their younger self and what would their younger self need to understand in order to adopt the principles or master this body of knowledge. Um, Sometimes I have them explain it to me. I'll say, I don't get it. The way I work with clients, each week they turn in work to me. So there is ongoing accountability because I also don't want their whole book to be written and it be off the mark. So they turn in their work to me and I will give them feedback like I don't understand this. Is there a step before this? What else do I need to know to get to the point that you're making here? So I think that's the beauty of having a book coach is that you get that ongoing feedback and accountability and cheerleading and
Right.
all the other things that I do. But it is giving that feedback to say this is not clear or I'm sure it's crystal clear to you, but you haven't set the stage properly. You haven't welcomed me as the reader into your narrative.
So when we first started this conversation, you spoke about you might be telling your story, but it's not for you. How
Mhm.
much how much do you work with people to tell various parts of their story? I mean, because
A lot.
oh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
But it's not just their story. It's what is the moral of the story and how can it help readers move forward. So and what I've found lately is that we need to sometimes start with the moral of the story. What's the lesson? What did you learn from this experience? Because unless you're a celebrity, your story isn't that important in unless it
Right.
leads to some deeper understanding, unless it contains a morsel of truth that helps us understand that truth in some clearer way. So it's helping people understand that yeah, it's your story, but it's for your reader. So be sure that as you're telling the story, you're only telling the parts of the story that make it come alive and that make your key point. So we may not want to hear about what happened when who when you were born and all of those early stories. It may not make any difference to the reader, and it's always important to start with that perspective.
I was going to say I don't mean this as a plug, but I'll just say it as a plug for Cathy. By way of a story, a friend of mine's a longtime experienced television reporter in the Portland, Oregon market. And he was talking to me about story once over, he and I were having breakfast. And, and he talked about finding an angle on a given story. And he told this story about a basketball team, and it was last game of the season, and their towel boy was a kid with a handicapable kid, and just desperately loved basketball and wanted to play. And ultimately, the rest of the story was them putting him in the final quarter, and the other team letting him go down and shoot a basket, and and so the reporter started talking about now how many different ways could we tell this story? It could be from the perspective of the kid that just had this dream moment. It could be from the perspective of their parents who've struggled to raise a kid with with some disability, or the other coach and the moral choice that he made to let this kid go score and whatever. That's my plug for you. Working with somebody like Cathy will help you find an angle on your story as well. At least I'm putting words. I hope I'm putting words in your mouth.
No, this is great. Yes, because there's a moral in that story, but there could be, a dozen or more different morals to that story. So it's finding out what is the moral, what is the lesson that's important for your reader to understand and know based on the context of your book and the greater information that you're sharing.
Yeah, I would just encourage you to connect with Cathy, because the power is sometimes that external pair of eyes will find an angle that you never thought of, right? I've been telling that story on stage for 10 years and never realized that there was another way to look at that particular story that I've been telling. And so that's one of the powers of working with somebody. Mm-hmm. Cathy, for those who might consider something like collaborative writing or even ghost writing, what are best practices to ensure that the final product truly reflects their voice and expertise?
I tell you, I'm not a fan of ghostwriting because it often, well, the feedback that I've gotten from authors who have tried it is it's very hard for the ghostwriter to capture your true voice. They can capture facts about you, they can capture knowledge or key points, but they miss some essence of who you are. And my other belief, as I've already told you, I think that the author learns about themselves, their topic, and they deepen that expertise. You're missing out on all of that if you're having someone else do that, that paring down, that discernment that comes with actually writing your own book.
Do you ever find that in the process of someone working with you to write their book reveals gaps in their knowledge? Meaning, is part of that self-discovery going
Well,
on?
let's put it this way. We all have gaps in our knowledge.
Very
So
true.
that's why it's important to define in advance the scope of the book and what you're going to talk about, because there may be things that are tangential to your topic that you just frankly don't know about. And that's okay. You don't have to know everything about everything. And you don't have to know everything even about the topic that you're writing about, but you have to know a lot about the slice of your topic that you're going to be sharing. So I think it's a matter of being clear about the scope of the project as you begin writing your book.
Yeah, that's fair. What came to mind, and obviously we're just having a conversation here, and
Yes.
I had my assistant a lot of years ago. I had an assistant, and she was an English major. And so I said, okay, time to pull stuff together for another book. And she started pulling together blog posts and all this kind of stuff. And next thing you know, we get this 500-page document. And she had gone ahead and categorized it and created an initial table of contents. And she says, we need more content here. As in, I'm doing this. I got 500 pages of content to edit through. And she's still saying, I got gaps in having a complete idea relative to the book. And so I'm like, oh yeah, I'm an expert in my little thing. And I got gaps. I have room to grow. So
Yeah. But I do, by the way, I love the idea of going from blog to book. And in fact, one of my books is titled Blog to Book, Repurposing Content to Discover the Book You've Already Written. Because if you've written a lot of content pieces, it may be able to come together and put it into a book so that you're just writing chunks that maybe we're missing that you still know about, but you just haven't written a blog on that yet.
Tell me more about that. Because, I mean, honestly, that sounds like, I remember seeing that on your website. That sounds like something that could
Yes,
really touch down for our audience, corporate marketers, right? Because they're blogging and writing white papers and that kind of thing anyway.
absolutely.
Assuming they're not going,
I
wanting
think this
to,
is one of the easiest way to write a book is if you've been writing about a specific focus area. What I did when I was approached, actually, I had several people approach me about doing a blog to book. They said, I've got all this content and I feel like there's a book in there, but I have no idea how to make it happen. So I said, oh, that's great. I'd love to coach you. And then I thought, oh my gosh, that's a great book topic. So I ended up doing writing a blog to book, and it was based on previous blogs I'd already written, but there were some content pieces that needed to be added that were specific to the book, things that I still knew about but needed to write as fresh pieces of content, which could also then be repurposed as blog posts later. I love the idea of the blog to book. It's because, especially for those of us who don't like to write or find that it's very challenging, it's an easy way to get your book written. But there's some things you have to watch out for, of course. Some posts that you may have may be redundant over time. So, but in the course of a blog, you might want to repeat some things, but in the course of a book, you don't want to have a lot of redundancies. You also want to have some kind of parallel structure or some theme that does weave everything together. So those are some things that you'll need to consider.
have you ever had someone go the other way, meaning they decided to get their book written by way of blogging?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I've talked with quite a few people they said, "Oh, I need to be marketing my business or getting my thought leadership out there in the market." And I said, well, let's do it at the same time. Let's be really smart. Let's write chunks of your book that you can repurpose as blog posts. And one of my recent authors just did that very thing. And she was able to write her book pretty darn quickly.
That actually is what got me blogging for the very first time, because I was offered a book deal and with a publisher, and I didn't like the terms of the deal. I'm a business guy. I can read contracts, and I'm like, and plus, because my background was also music, the economics of creating content and publishing it in music and books has a very similar kind of economic pattern. And so anyway, I've just reading this contract going, I'm just not sure that deal makes sense for me. But it got me off my duff to start blogging. I'm like, okay, I need a book. Somebody thinks enough of it to want to invest in me writing a book. So I took me about 6 months to kind of blog out my book and finally get something to market. Let's talk about the promo end of things. When you've got your book, and one of the things you mentioned earlier is sometimes then not knowing what to do now that I've got it, besides give a copy to my mom, who probably isn't going to read it. What advice? Well, let me even just start right there. Rather than asking a specific question, when you think about the post-book process, launch, continued operationalizing of how you distribute, where do you even start with someone?
Sometimes it's just as simple as starting with your current marketing assets. This is something I have folks think about. If you have a website, if you have a newsletter, if you have other marketing assets, how can you integrate your book and let that be a part of what you are now putting out there in the world? So just going through and doing an audit. I've done a program before about just doing the marketing audit of what assets do I have? How can I include the book? How can I seamlessly put it into my ongoing efforts. For example, the most basic thing is as a tag on your email signature,
Mm.
author of the book with a little picture of the book's cover, or author of the forthcoming book with a picture of the proposed cover. So just thinking about those sorts of things, thinking about your bio, your introduction, your um, all of those different assets.
Uh, Immediately prior to being on with you, I interviewed a fellow speaker, a friend of ours, Patrick Donadio, and his LinkedIn profile picture is a picture of him holding his book. There you go.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. I love it. Yeah, he's practicing what I preach. So I love that. So yes, having those things on all of your social media posts, having it on your profile, very important.
A book launch can be a really intensive activity. Is that a place you go? Do you how much weight do you put on what might be traditionally termed a launch in the publishing industry?
I believe that every author should have a launch. I don't think it's one event. I think it is a series of events over 12 months. And there are a series of events that you should plan. For example, my most recent book was just made into an audiobook. And so it's an opportunity, even though the book came out almost a year ago, it's an opportunity for me to revisit all of the same things I did before and now promote the fact that I have this audiobook. So it's thinking about the series of events, series of learning opportunities, whether they be webinars or master classes or presentations or parties or events. Those are all things that can be really helpful, and sometimes it's having a book, and a new book is a great excuse to have an event, and it
Mhm.
allows you to invite your friends, your colleagues, for them to invite their friends to learn more about this new thing that you've created in the world. So it can be because I love any kind of gatherings. I love community events. I love parties, and this is an excuse to get my friends together and celebrate.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I really appreciate the idea that you think about it as a process or an ongoing activity. It might start with the launch, as in, okay, it's officially available today.
Mhm.
Just mentioned a precipitating or inciting event down the road, which was the release of the audiobook. Are there other precipitating events or inciting events that give you other opportunities to promo or create visibility?
Absolutely. Um, you can even do a staggered launch with your paperback and your ebook and then the audiobook. Some of my authors are creating a workbook that accompanies their book. So all of those things can help because it's an excuse to go out there in the market and say, hey, we've got something new, a new product to help you and to solve your problem. Um, the other thing is some of my authors have started doing promotions around the anniversary of their book or the birthday of their book, whatever you choose to call it. But thinking about that, it's been out a year. Here's what I've learned. Here's the new things. Here's the things I've heard from readers. Here's the things I've heard from clients, and it's another reason to go to the marketplace and share some good news.
I've seen some folks be creative with combining some of those elements that you just talked about. Like they give away a PDF of the workbook because they know that you'll probably then buy the book, right? Or
Right.
right, or vice versa. Any other creative strategies that you've seen with how people have put stuff together?
Yeah, thinking about companion products and services can all be ways to piggyback on the excitement of your book. That's still themed in with your content. That's still congruent with all of that, but yet taking it to a new level. So yes, thinking about all of those opportunities.
You mentioned earlier that you and Lois Kramer like the idea of combining books and speaking. And to me, that is a really natural marriage. And I would imagine anybody in corporate marketing is also speaking. If not, maybe having the potential to grow in that direction, right? You want to speak at more conferences for your own personal brand or whatever. Just out of curiosity, what top couple ideas do you use to initiate helping somebody think about combining speaking and authorship? And I'll qualify it this way. To me, there's a difference between being a professional speaker and a professional who speaks. Right? Some of us go out and we get paid to go speak at a conference or run a workshop, and that's okay. And that's how Cathy and I each got our CSPs. But everybody is a professional who speaks. And I'm just curious, are there any creative ways that you marry those two that we haven't talked about so far?
Well, the one piece of advice I can give is that if you've created a book, that's probably more than you could ever share in any presentation. So the first big job is to decide what sliver of your book. Uh, Granted that your book is a sliver of the topic, but your presentation is even a smaller sliver of your book. So, for example, if you had 10 principles, maybe you just pick the three basic principles of your idea, or maybe you condense, or maybe it's not. I know with one of my books, I had in one of the opening chapters, I had 10 principles, and then I even got into more specific strategies and so forth. This was for recruiting. Um, but my talk generally was about the principles, and instead, where I had 10 in the book, I think I used five. And if it was a keynote, I would do three, depending on how much time I had. So, helping executives learn how to take all of that content and deliver it in a way that is memorable and that is um, digestible.
And I will even just add this, because you just described doing something naturally that I'm just going to use some different language for. I call it, what's
Okay.
the no-brainer next step? I'm not a big fan of the word call to action, like somehow, I'm just like, if you nail the 5 principles and there's 10 principles in the book, you don't even have to be a salesperson. All you got to do is stand up and really help somebody get excited about what you just said. And then the no-brainer next step is, well, of course I'm going to buy the book.
Exactly, exactly. So some speakers think they have to tell different stories than what are in your book, but really, if I know I've bought books from speakers that I love their stories and I love to see them in the book. So it doesn't have to be different and distinct, but you will have to make it a different version for sure.
Yeah. I found a couple things with regard to monetizing that I just loved. That unless somebody's going to speak and write for free, at some point monetization comes into the thing. My accountant once discovered, and I don't know if this was Oregon law or national law with regard to accounting, but she discovered that I didn't have to pay self-employment tax on products sold. So speaking was a service, and I paid an additional 15% self-employment tax. But if I sold books, I didn't have to. So $1 of revenue was worth more if I sold a book as opposed to getting that dollar as a speaking fee. So I'd just write contracts so that I'd bake in them buying 200 books and lower my speaking fee to make it all come out in the wash and increase my margin a little bit.
I
So
love that. I
I'm not
love that.
a professional. You should talk to your own accountant. So
Yes, yes.
just what percentage of your authors do think about monetizing?
Oh, I would say 100%.
Okay.
I would say 100%. Most all of my authors come to me because, yeah, there is the legacy thing and it's cool to write a book, but most of them it's a business decision.
Got it.
And I would say 100% of the cases it's a smart business decision.
What what categories of your services have we not talked about? Sure.
Well, I do coaching, but maybe one distinction is I do a 6 month coaching package, but then I also offer a VIP coaching package, which can be a 3 day intensive with some pre work and post work, and we get it kind of done over a long weekend. I also have group coaching options. So what I've found is that no two people like to write their book the same way or learn about writing their book the same way. So I have a variety of different services and programs. Also, if anybody is interested in getting on my mailing list, I do a lot of free events, usually a monthly master class on some topic that is relevant to writing, publishing, or promoting your book. So those things are also offered if you're interested in just getting on my mailing list. You can just send an email to me at Cathy@cathyfyock.com.
Believe it or not, I didn't ask that for the sake of promoting. The purpose behind the question, I probably should have prefaced it instead of giving it to
Okay.
you as the appendix. But my purpose in asking the question is because I have found that this is probably true for all of us in some way, that we tend to think about something in a particular way. And you, along the way of answering the question, just illuminated exactly what I was hoping you would illuminate, which is that, yeah, no, 6 month masterclass, the 6 month cohort, that's not me. Oh, intensive. That's what makes sense to me relative to time, money, schedule, et cetera, because
Mm-hmm.
I think there are a lot of different ways to get a book written, and
Yes, there are.
it is a particular challenge. I mean, for me, for instance, I'll use presentations as an analogy because of my background. People have a zillion times asked me, "What's your process from going from idea to you got the whole presentation written?" And I'm like, "You don't want to know my process. It's a big fat mess. I start in a mind mapping tool, and then I'd turn and literally go right on a physical whiteboard, and then sooner or later I'm moving that into an outliner, and before it ever touches PowerPoint." And I'm like, it's a big fat mess, but it works for me in the way that my random linear, non-linear brain tends to work. Just out of curiosity, do you touch down with process in different ways for different people? Or
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
yeah.
And it kind of depends. Like I just had a new client this morning. He's working on his third book with me now. And so it's really fun. But each book has been different, unique. And he said, I've been talking about this topic and I have 20 different traits that he had identified for this leadership concept. And so we started talking about it. I said, tell me more about it. So what evolved from that conversation was that the first 10 were the obvious 10. And then the second column were oh, it's never been articulated, but those are real. So we're looking at uh, a design of the book that probably will be in two major sections, and that will also maybe have 20 smaller chapters as opposed to what he's written in the past. So every book sort of takes on a life of its own based on what the author has already learned about the topic, how they have delivered, if they've been speaking about that topic, if they have some insights. So that comes through the exploration process. I generally give new clients a worksheet before our first meeting, and I have them do some deep thinking about some of those strategic elements of the book. And in fact, I have a workbook even that I will send to my clients that help them go through some of those exercises as we get clarity on what does the book look like.
As we drive toward wrapping, let's zero in on that corporate marketing executive who I'm going to presume the vast majority of them have never written a book, right? I think that's probably a reasonable gut.
Probably.
if they were to call you, what questions would you love to be asked that they probably haven't thought about because they've never written a book?
Well, I think one of the basics is how much time does it really take? And what I have learned is that you need at least 5 hours a week to get it done, to have the moment. I mean, if you do an hour a week and you're consistent in that, but what I found is there's not enough momentum in that that gives you the dopamine hit to say, oh yeah, I've got this done and I'm ready to move on to the next piece. So there is something about 5 hours a week at a minimum. Sometimes my authors say, I'm not sure if this is the right, if it has a market. So we'll talk sometimes about that, the marketability of a particular idea. Some people come to me and say, I don't know, I want to write something about leadership, but is that just, so redundant in today's world? And I said, only until we've solved leadership problems is it redundant. So until then, we're looking for new solutions, new perspectives, new ways. So I do think that while I don't expect authors to have a completely new take, but they need to be approaching their topic with some new lens, with some new um, perspective that is unique to that person. So we'll usually have a discussion to explore what that is, and so that we can articulate that in the book.
If you're still listening, one, thank you. And two, let me encourage you to rewind the audio here and listen to what Cathy just said again. As I was past president of National Speakers Association of Oregon, I've had coffee with hundreds of people who sit down and want to go, oh, well, what do I do? I want to be a professional speaker. Where do I even start? And one of the illustrations that I would often use is, does the world need another sales trainer? No. Is there always room to be successful with you being a salesperson, the sales trainer? The answer is yes, for exactly what Cathy just said. You have an angle. You have a perspective. You have something that somebody like Cathy can help you draw out that is an angle that gives you your own story. And, of course, they can go to Amazon and find 500 books on sales, how to sell. But you've got something unique because you're unique. And with that, I hope you call Cathy at some point in time. CathyFyock.com, Cathy with a C, FYOCK.com. Cathy, thank you so much for spending a little time with us today.
Oh, well, thank you.
Besides your website, is there any place that you prefer to connect?
Just email is great. Anybody who'd like to schedule a complimentary strategy session and just talk about their idea and to see if a book is right for them, I'm happy to have an exploratory conversation. Just send me an email at Cathy@CathyFyock.com.
Well, with that, thank you again to Cathy, and thank you again to our sponsor today, virtualvenues.com, where you can instantly scale your virtual and hybrid event production team. We'll catch you on the next episode of Thought Leader Conversations.